The Senate will come to order. Senator Klein.
Mr. President, I impose a call of the Senate.
The Senate is now under call. Senator Klein.
Mr. President, I move that further proceedings under the roll call be dispensed with and the Sergeant at Arms be instructed to bring in the absent members.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Members, will you be so kind as to stand? In our Senate tradition, we start our day with prayer. Today's chaplain is Pastor Ruthie Nhunga. You got it. Did I get it right? Okay. From Gustavus Adolphus Lutheran Church in St. Paul. Members, and following the prayer, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
We pray. Creator of the universe, source of all life and love, we pause today to acknowledge your presence among us, within this chamber, in the halls beyond, and in every life touched by the work done here. We give you thanks for the gift of governance, for the calling for us to come together across differences to deliberate and discern and to seek the good of the whole. Grant these senators and all who serve in this place eyes to see clearly the needs of the people and ears to hear deeply voices often overlooked. Guide all who serve, that their work may be marked by justice, humility, and care for our neighbors. Amen.
Thank you, members. The Secretary will take the roll.
Abler, Barr, Bolden, Carlson, Champion, Clark, Coleman, Swadzinski, Dames, Dibble, Dornick, Draheim, Drazkowski, Duckworth, Farnsworth, Fateh, Frentz, Green, Grunhagen, Gustafson, Hochschild, Herr, Heinzman, Hemmingson-Jaeger, Hoffman, Holmstrom, Housley, Howe, Jasinski, Johnson, Johnson-Stewart, Klein, Coran, Kroon, Kunish, Kupik, Lang, Latz, Liskey, Limmer, Lucero, Mann, Marty, Matthews, May Quaid, McEwen, Miller, Mohammed, Murphy, Nelson, Verbatim, Pappas, Pa, Port, Pratt, Putnam, Rarick, Rasmussen, Rest, Seeberger, Utke, Weber, Wiesenberg, Westland, Westrom, Wickland, Zhang.
Members, a quorum is present. The following members intend to vote from a remote location pursuant to Rule 40.7. Senators Carlson, Hochschild, and Liskey. Members, if you'd like to follow along, I'm reading from today's Senate agenda that is dated Thursday, March 26, 2026. We will begin at the fifth order of business, reports of committees. Senator Murphy for a motion to adopt the committee reports.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee reports printed in the agenda and the addendum be adopted.
On the adoption of the committee reports and the addendum, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Members, we will now proceed to the sixth order of business. The sixth order of business is second reading of Senate bills. The Secretary will read the Senate file numbers.
Senate file numbers 3627, 4757, 4332, 4561, 4069, 4068, and 4339.
The Senate bills have been given their second reading. We'll now move to the seventh order of business, which is second reading of House bills. The Secretary will read the House file numbers.
House file numbers 3741 and 3802.
The House files have been given their second reading. Now moving to the eighth order of business, which is introduction and first reading of Senate bills. There is an introduction to read at the desk. The Secretary will read the introduction.
Senator Zhang introduces Senate file number 4932, a bill for an act relating to state government.
Senate file number 4932 is referred to the Committee on State and Local Governments. The bills listed on today's introduction calendar are given their first reading and referred as indicated. We have a couple modifications, members. On page number 3, you'll see Senate file number 4885. That bill has been referred to the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety. If you go to page number 5, you'll see Senate file number 4898. That bill has been referred to the Committee on State and Local Governments. As I mentioned, members, the bills listed on today's introduction calendar are given their first reading and referred as indicated. Members, we'll now proceed to the ninth order of business. That is motions and resolutions. We will adopt the author's motions as one motion. All in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. There are some individual senators that we'll call on for a motion. Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate it. I move that Senate File 2061 be withdrawn from the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety and re-referred to the Committee State and Local Government. It's my bill. I've spoken with both chairs.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Senate Resolution number 70 and 71 will be referred to the Committee on Rules and Administration. Now remaining under motions and resolutions, Senator Murphy to designate special orders.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pursuant to Rule 26, I designate the following bills be made special orders for immediate consideration.
Members, as indicated, the special orders bills the list of special order bills are on your desk. We will begin with House File 4541. Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, the bill that I present today, House File 4541, would repeal the state holiday that celebrates Cesar Chavez on March 31st, his birthday. I was one of the authors of the law that created this holiday with chief author Senator Patricia Torres Ray. The statute says Cesar Chavez Day celebrates the growing Latino community in Minnesota, which continues to grow. I carry this repealer with respect for every worker who fought for their rights during the United Farm Workers movement, and for every Latino person who sees themselves reflected in the power of that movement. Many of you are already aware of the New York Times investigation published last week that revealed Chavez's sexual abuse and assault of 2 underage girls, as well as his adult colleague, organizer Dolores Huerta. The investigation was shocking, disturbing, and necessary. Chavez has been celebrated for years for his role in the United Farm Workers Union, while the women who survived his abuse suffered in silence. The fact that they came forward is a testament to their courage and resilience. Whether they choose to share their stories or not, whether it takes days or decades, we honor and support every survivor. The message from today's workers and leaders is clear. Cesar Chavez Day is no longer how we should celebrate Minnesota's Latino communities. Out of respect and admiration for the survivors who came forward and for every activist who has felt pressure to keep their abuse a secret for the sake of their movement, we must repeal Minnesota's Cesar Chavez state holiday. While we reconsider his legacy, I look forward to finding another way to honor Minnesota's wonderful Latino communities, whether that's the creation of a Dolores Huerta Day or United Farm Workers Day. I know that we will create a new holiday that we can all celebrate without reservation. Thank you, and I appreciate your vote.
Any other discussion on House File number 4541? Senator Humster.
Mr. President and members, I want to begin by congratulating the Minnesota Senate for finally coming to its senses and moving to repeal Cesar Chavez Day. For far too long, this state has honored a man whose Marxist ideology and conduct were deeply troubling. It is encouraging to see this body finally recognize the evil at the root of that ideology and take action to remove this stain from our calendar. None of the terrible things we know about Cesar Chavez is new information. The reports of sexual assault, strong-arm tactics, loyalty tests, and abusive control have been documented and discussed for decades. We knew these things in 2014 when the Democrat trifecta created this holiday. We have known them every single year since. Every year we celebrated this disgusting day was a contribution to the victimization of the girls and women he abused. Honoring him normalized this behavior and silenced their suffering. Cesar Chavez is part of a long list of communist idols who proved that this ideology is nothing more than the worship of self, used to elevate their own status and power at the expense of their most loyal and foolish followers. Members, today you have the opportunity to correct this mistake. But before you pick up a microphone or reach for that green button, you should be prepared to answer for your years of inaction. You should be prepared to answer one simple question: what has changed? It's not new information that has been available for decades. It's certainly not sudden compassion for his victims who have never seemed to matter before. So what changed? Chavez was a monster, and this repeal is long overdue and fully deserved. But do not insult the public by pretending this vote is anything more than an act of shame. Do the right thing today. Repeal this holiday, and next time, perhaps, show some courage before the headlines force your hand. Thank you.
Any other discussion on House File 4541? Senator Mann.
Thank you, Mr. President. From the very beginning, Cesar Chavez Day and the recognition of this one man completely overlooked the role that women played in the farm worker movement. Incredible, incredible movement. where we as women had significant leadership roles. No movement is just one person. So for really far too long, we have asked women to keep quiet. We have asked them to downplay their accomplishments, to take abuse in the name of movements and in the name of the collective good. So let this repeal be a declaration for women, especially for women of color, saying that we will not be kept silent, we will not accept abuse in the name of anything. And going forward, we will hold those who believe that women are second-class citizens who can be kept quiet and quietly abused, and those who believe that children hold no value and they can be abused. We will hold those people accountable for their actions. And lastly, we will not diminish the accomplishments of the Latina people in America and in Minnesota because of the actions of one man. He does not represent the culture. His actions do not represent our resilience, our fight for justice for all, and he does not represent the heart and the strength that our women mean to our people. There is no shame today, Mr. President, because we believe in women, we believe in children, and this action represents that. Thank you.
Any additional discussion before we give the bill its third reading? Seeing none, the Secretary will give the bill its third reading.
House File Number 4541, a bill for an act relating to state government eliminating Cesar Chavez Day.
Third reading. Any other discussion before we vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will take the roll. Senator Jasinski, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Coleman votes aye.
Senator Coleman votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Liskey votes aye.
Senator Liskey votes aye. Senator Umu Verbaden, for those voting pursuant to 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Hofschild votes aye.
Senator Hofschild votes aye.
And Senator Latz votes aye.
And Senator Latz votes aye. All members having voted who desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There have been 67 ayes and 0 nays. The bill is passed and its title agreed to. Members, we will now take up House File 3425. Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, members. We have before us House File 3425, a bill that passed off the floor of the other body with bipartisan support and replaces my bill, Senate File 3595. This timely bill brings financial assurance to supportive housing providers that they will be able to keep their doors open and Minnesotans housed despite funding cuts. Supportive housing providers across our state deliver critical services that help keep our neighbors who are most at risk of homelessness in stable, secure housing. This proven work reduces and prevents homelessness in every county across our state. The federal Continuum of Care program that funds Minnesota's providers is facing cuts, which is why we need to move this bill today. Neutral to the bottom line, this bill expands the use of an existing $9 million fund at MHFA, originally intended to strengthen supportive housing. At a time when providers are facing financial destabilization, what we can best do to strengthen supportive housing is allow these pre-vetted providers to receive grants that temporarily backfill these federal cuts as work continues on a long-term funding solution. Our ability to respond decisively will have real impacts on the lives of everyday Minnesotans. One provider from Virginia, Minnesota writes, "If these funds disappear, people who are housed will become homeless. In greater Minnesota, homelessness often looks like families doubling up, staying with others, creating unintended consequences, putting those households at risk too. With already limited resources in rural areas, this compounds housing instability and perpetuates cycles of homelessness. Members, we have the opportunity to prevent homelessness and the destabilization of families across our communities with this bill today. It is a temporary fix, but I hope you will join me and the 103 of our colleagues in the other body who supported it." Thank you, Mr. President.
Any discussion on House File 3425? Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it, and I would like to offer the A4 amendment, please.
Senator Duckworth offers the A4 amendment. The Secretary will report the A4 amendment.
Senator Duckworth moves to amend House File number 3425 as follows. Page 1, line 8, strike 10 million. This is the A4 amendment.
Senator Duckworth, to your A4 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would request a roll call, please.
Roll call requested, roll call granted.
Mr. President, thank you. I promise to be brief on this amendment, and I'm going to explain to members what it does so that when they cast their vote, they know what they're voting for or potentially voting for against. And before I get into that, Mr. President, I want to acknowledge that I understand that the funding that we're talking about today and what the bill that Senator Port has brought before us would do is seek to help those that are struggling when it comes to housing. What this bill would do is take $9 million that has been in excess at one of our state agencies and redirect it to the general fund for the specific purpose of providing property tax relief, specifically renters credit refunds, as well as homestead credit refunds. And here's why, Mr. President. We've heard from a lot of folks all across the state of Minnesota, many of our constituents, that their property tax burden has simply become too much. In 2026 alone, across the entire state of Minnesota, it's projected that Minnesotans are going to see a collective $1 billion increase in their property taxes. But here's what I want to distinguish, Mr. President. I know we're talking about people that are struggling when it comes to housing, and so it makes it difficult to say, well, yeah, we need to help those people, and property tax relief, is it really? It helps a lot of people, Mr. President. Here's why. Many of us are hearing from constituents that are seeing their property taxes increase by double-digit percentages. And I would argue that many of those folks are in just as big a need as those who would benefit from some of the funds in Senator Port's bill as it is. Specifically, Mr. President, many of our seniors and those who live on fixed incomes who every year dread getting that property tax notice in the mail, especially over the last few years when they've seen those property taxes increase by 5, 10, 12% or more in some instances. We're simply pricing people out of the homes they already own, many of them free and clear. That's not fair. And so while we're having conversations about helping people in need, many other people across Minnesota are asking, what are you doing to help me? I'm also in need. And so is my family. That's why I've brought this amendment forward, Mr. President. One more thing I'd like to add to the conversation is this. When property taxes increase, it not only puts stress on our residents and the people of Minnesota, it puts stress on our cities, it puts stress on our counties, and it puts stress on our school districts. And Mr. President, there are a lot of school districts across the state of Minnesota right now in dire need. They've got deficits. They're coming to their residents with referendums. And all of those residents who want to be supportive of their schools and students and teachers are struggling with, do I vote yes for this referendum, knowing that my property tax burden is already crushing me? So I would ask members to please vote yes. Let's provide some property tax relief to people all across the state of Minnesota. Thank you, Mr. President.
Members, we're on House File 3425. I'm going to Senator Rest.
Thank you, Mr. President. I object to the amendment. on the basis of germaneness in Rule 35, because this relates to a substantially different subject. The amendment deals with tax refunds, not appropriations, and on the other hand as well, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle will have ample opportunity in the tax bill to vote for property tax relief. But my objection is on the basis of germaneness.
The point of order is well taken. Members, we're on House File 3425. Any additional amendments or discussions before we go to third reading? Who? Oh. Senator Holmstrom.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to offer the A1 amendment.
Senator Holmstrom offers the A1 amendment. The Secretary will report the A1 amendment.
Senator Holmstrom moves to amend House File number 3425 as follows. Page 2, lines 16 and 17, delete 90. This is the A1 amendment.
Senator Holmstrom, to your A1 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment is aimed at increasing the amount of reporting. Currently, there is only a requirement for a report every 90 days. This would require every 30 days and require that the report includes the amount of grant money awarded that remains unspent. We are at a time of unprecedented fraud. The people of Minnesota expect us to raise the standards. This does just that and asks that if we're going to be giving money, we're getting consistent and honest reporting back. Thank you. I'd ask for a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. We're on the A1 Holmstrom amendment. Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. President. While I agree with the senator that none of us want fraud, this is a federal program that has specific requirements, including a 90-day reporting deadline. What we're also hearing from our counties is to please not overburden them with additional admin work that does nothing to support program integrity. This program has an incredible track record of over 40 years, and these vendors are vetted by the federal government. This is an overburden that will not help us keep anyone safe, but will waste administration dollars for our counties and providers. And so I ask for a no vote.
Any other discussion? And I believe, just so that I'm clear, there was a roll call requested. Is that right? All right. Any other discussion before we vote? Seeing none, the Secretary will take the roll on the A1 Holmstrom amendment. Senator Jasinski, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Coleman votes aye.
Senator Coleman votes aye.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Liskey votes aye.
Senator Liskey votes aye. Senator Umu Verbatim for those voting pursuant to 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes no.
Senator Carlson votes no.
Senator Hofschild votes no.
Senator Hofschild votes no.
And Senator Latz votes no.
And Senator Latz votes no. All senators having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 32 ayes and 35 nays, the A1 Holmstrom Amendment is not adopted. Any other amendments before we go to third reading? Seeing none, the secretary will give the bill its third reading.
House File Number 3425, a bill for an act relating to housing, appropriating money for grants to supporting housing providers.
Third reading. Any other discussion before we vote? Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate it. I promise I'm not bitter about my amendment not passing. But there's something else I wanted to touch on regarding this bill in general. No matter how well intended it is, there's an underlying, more pervasive, larger issue that I just want to highlight before we vote on it, which is this. We're asking to take $9 million in excess and move it from a government agency back into a general fund or use it for a different purpose. Well, that $9 million is available because $10 million was appropriated back in 2023 as part of a budget or government spending bill. And here we are in 2026, 3 years later, with $9 million of taxpayer dollars that has just been sitting in a bank account. It hasn't been sitting in the account of our constituents. It hasn't been in their savings account, their checkings account. It hasn't been in the account to pay for their child's college tuition in the future. It's not in their retirement accounts. It's not earning interest. It's not growing for them. But the government has been more than happy to hang on to it for 3 years. And this is just one example. I can only imagine the millions or probably billions in government excess of taxpayer dollars that are just hanging out there. Not with the people who earned them, who worked hard to bring those dollars home for their families and to provide for them. That's a larger issue, Mr. President. If we can't take a $19 billion surplus and return any of it to taxpayers, hang on to millions or billions for years, and then just simply repurpose it, not return it to them, but repurpose it, we've got a larger, more pervasive structural issue with how we're managing the finances of the state of Minnesota, and people are fed up. Because to add insult to injury, Mr. President, not only did we hold on to millions or billions of their dollars and not use it, we allowed billions to go out the door in the form of fraud. Until or unless we do something about that and get serious about protecting the tax dollars of the people of Minnesota, we continue to fail them. We're spending way too much of their hard-earned money. We're taking it and keeping it year after year and watching it go out the door in fraudulent schemes and programs, Mr. President. If by the end of this session we haven't done them the service of fixing it, not just once, but for good, then we will have failed the people of Minnesota yet again. And I'm telling you, they're getting pretty tired of it.
Senator Gruenhagen.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, members, here we have another bill that, even according to the chief author, is temporary one-time money. So again, we're putting a Band-Aid on an economic infection that that primarily Democrats created in this state. What do I mean? Well, members, I have an example here, December 2025, that compares the price of a home to build a home in Minnesota and to build the same home in the 5 surrounding states. Listen to these numbers carefully. In Minnesota, to build a medium new home is $560,000. To build it in North Dakota is $495,000, the same house. That's over $160,000 less expensive than Minnesota. To build it in South Dakota is $366,000. That's almost $200,000 cheaper for the same house in South Dakota versus Minnesota. You build it in Iowa, you're over $160,000 cheaper for the same house, members. Even Illinois, you're at least about $30,000 cheaper for the same house. Wisconsin, you're about $60,000 cheaper for the same house. So members, we need to treat the economic infection and not put a Band-Aid on something that is going to get worse or be the same after the $9 million's gone. And that's what you're doing here. You know, one of the problems, we passed green new scam laws on our construction, residential and commercial. That should be repealed. Even Governor Hochul in New York, who was a disciple of the Green New Deal, has said, you know what? We got to repeal some of these worthless laws. They're driving up the cost of everything. Now, I added the word worthless. It's also a scam, and it's going to come crashing down after we spent trillions of dollars globally and in this country trying to promote this godless nonsense. So, members, let's treat the economic infection rather than just, well, here's some more money we're taking from somebody in here. We'll help you out for a little bit. Hopefully you'll vote for us. Again, you want to see the problem, members, especially Democrats. Look in the mirror and you'll see the problem. It's the laws that you are promoting and passing in this body, and that needs to change. And members, I can't support this bill unless we deal with the infection. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Bowden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the author of this bill for her work on this. This is an incredibly important program, one that it is really important for us to protect. This will assist the over 3,600 Minnesotans who currently depend on the Continuum of Care program. These are folks who are the most vulnerable, the most at risk, people who are chronically homeless. This is the program that keeps them safely housed. Nearly half of all permanent supportive housing in Minnesota is funded through this program. And when we go out to greater Minnesota, that number drastically raises. In southern Minnesota and Rochester, that goes up to 81%. So I want to just recenter us on who we're talking about here. This is Minnesotans who need this support, people who without this will become homeless. And I want to just briefly, Mr. President, read a very brief quote from one individual who has benefited from this program, Daryl, who says, "I'm a proud United States veteran who served my country with honor. After my discharge, life became incredibly difficult. I spent over 6 years homeless in Red Wing. I had no idea that veterans supportive housing was even available, but thankfully they stepped in and changed everything for me. At first, they got me off the streets by placing me in a motel room for a short period, and then moved me to Maplewood for a year and a half, where I was able to focus on my health and well-being. After that, I transitioned to Rochester and entered a supportive housing program, which truly transformed my life." So members, that is what we are talking about here. Support for Minnesotans in every county, in every district across the state, making sure that they get the support that they need and keep a roof over their heads. So thank you, Mr. President. I'm proud to vote green.
Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I just want to inform the body, kind of building on Senator Ducksworth's comments. You know, as much as I appreciate the passion that Senator Bolden and Senator Port have for housing, like I do, the body should be concerned about how this agency functions. And when you look at the money that we appropriated, the tax dollars that we took from hardworking Minnesotans, and we appropriated it for programs, the agency earned $57 million of interest on those programs that we decided as a body were important for Minnesotans. So it doesn't matter if you like the program or dislike the program, we should be concerned as a body how those funds are being used, or in this case, not used. And during the same time, members, I had many nonprofits contact me and explain that the program that they were counting on getting funded for, the agency told me the delay in funding the program was due to liquidity issues. Think about that. Hardworking Minnesotan tax dollars paid in to the state, we appropriate those funds to an agency, and the agency can't get that money out, and then they make $57 million off of it. We have a structural problem with how this agency is run, and this has no reflection on Senator Port's bill independently, other than this money was appropriated years ago. And I hope as we move towards the end of session, we can address how this agency handles appropriations. That is the underlying problem that we must take care of this year, members. Thank you.
Senator Kunesh.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am rising to support this Senate File 3425, recognizing and hearing from not only the community that I represent, but the broader Native American community, how vital this funding is and how it can help to prevent the historic and tragic homelessness situation of our Indigenous people. Our Native people are up to 30% times more likely to experience homelessness and 4 times more likely to live in poverty. And this has been generational. We've seen incredible and positive strides in the last decade or so in ensuring that our Native folks are not experiencing homelessness at the rate that they had, and that necessitates trust-based solutions. I want to share a statement from Chief Executive Officer of the American Indian Community Development Corporation, Travis Earthwarner, that gives a really direct message to us all. Our HUD-funded communities are deeply rooted in American Indian culture. Although we serve everyone and uphold fair housing laws, these communities offer a place where American Indians can feel safe and feel supported. And that is not something our communities have felt for hundreds of years. Losing access to this type of housing and services program would have widespread effects. Minnesota already faces significant disparities in homelessness and housing for its American Indian people, and losing metro resources would only make that worse. When people trust us and see that we understand their needs and are here to help, supportive housing absolutely is effective. Without these programs, there will be even fewer community resources, especially when demand is growing. We need to ask ourselves why support is increasingly difficult to obtain, and why issues like overdoses, visible homelessness, and unmet needs continue to rise. Members, right now and right here, Minnesota's leadership has to act to protect these resources in our communities, and I ask you all to support House File 3425.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Thank you, Senator Port, for bringing this up and for us to work on and vote for. Members, many of you are probably aware that I bring a focus and a lot of hard work on youth who are struggling with homelessness in Minnesota. I had the honor and pleasure of being the chief author of the Homeless Youth Act a number of years ago, and many of you have joined with me many, many times over the years to strengthen what we're doing on behalf of youth struggling with homelessness across the entire state of Minnesota. What we identified, and the reason we passed that bill in the first place, is because young people who are disconnected from their family really need what we call a continuum of care, a range of options, and that includes certainly street outreach so that we're connecting with these young people who are in our communities, who are struggling, bringing them into shelter, transitioning them into what we call transitional housing, ultimately connecting them with supportive housing if they cannot become reconnected and rejoin their families for whatever reason. Paired with all of the things that you would then find in that setting, of course, which are clothes, food, healthcare, education, mentoring, love, connection to caring and loving adults, a purpose, which gives rise, of course, to hope, dreams, and aspirations for a brighter and better future. And it is shown to be extremely successful. Members, every single night in Minnesota, we have more than 4,000 young people who are homeless. We might not see them on the streets. Many of them are out on the streets, but many of them are precariously housed, sleeping on sofas, or doing other things just to gain shelter. It's a tragedy occurring right in our midst. These funds that are under threat are essential. Let me tell you what Beth Holger, who is the executive director of the Link, tells us. People are losing housing across the country, and right here in Minnesota, that's devastating, especially in a state where winters are brutally cold. When people sleep outside in those conditions, they die. For youth, homelessness is even harder. It disrupts their education because it's nearly impossible to focus on schoolwork when you're worried about where you'll sleep, how to stay safe at night. It hurts attendance, grades, and overall learning. And youth without stable housing are far more vulnerable to harm, whether it's sexual assault, being trafficked, or other forms of exploitation. Homelessness doesn't just take away a home. It puts young people at serious risk. We can do better, and we have been doing better, slowly, incrementally, over time in Minnesota. The threat from the federal government threatens to set us way back, and we have young people who would experience even greater harm in higher numbers. So please, let's vote green on this, and thank you again, Senator Port, for bringing this to the floor. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to summarize, this bill takes money that was appropriated back in 2023 and uses it for a different purpose. Money that has been sitting there unused by the Walz administration and the Department of Housing. Senate Democrats gave money to supportive housing. We did nothing with it. They haven't used it to reduce homelessness. They've been using it in a fund to earn interest. They have earned over $153 million in interest on these funds. Meanwhile, property taxes are going up. This body shifted $400 million from the state budget onto the counties. And that's one of the main reasons why we're seeing property taxes rise so much. Mr. President, what we forget is that we are putting seniors out of their homes because they can't afford to pay their property taxes. This money should go back to the general fund. This money should be used for property tax relief. These funds should cancel back, and we should be reappropriating it to aid the entire state, to aid every Minnesota family that is struggling, every Minnesota family that's living paycheck to paycheck, every Minnesota family that is falling behind on their tax bill, because we are one of the 5 highest tax states in the country. And yet, here we are with money sitting in a slush fund just earning interest. Money in a slush fund after we've seen billions go out the door in fraud. Mr. President, Minnesotans are asking for relief, and I think they deserve it. Thank you.
Senator McEwen.
Thank you. Members, I rise today to speak strongly in favor of House File 3425. And I just want to speak briefly about the needs that we have in the northern part of our state. Sometimes we think about these funds going to help people in more urban areas, but in rural areas of our state, in areas outside of the Twin Cities, the need particularly for these supportive housing funds is crucial. And one of the people who has weighed in to share experiences of helping youth is the executive director from Range Transitional Housing up in Virginia, Minnesota. And that executive director shared that a youth, just 17, became homeless after leaving a difficult home life marked by her parents' struggles with substance use and mental health, forced to couch surf and escape an abusive relationship with a much older predatory man. She finally found help through our housing program, which secured her safe housing and connected her with counseling. With support, this youth overcame depression and anxiety, graduated high school, held a job, opened her first bank account, and got her driver's license. Now, she's rebuilding family ties, moving in with her grandparents, and pursuing her dream of becoming an EMT, a testament to resilience and the impact of stable support. So members, please join me today in supporting the funding for that stable support. Let's keep it going. Thanks.
Members, we're on final passage of House File 3425. I don't see who else I see pointing. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Did you want to say something, Senator Lucero? Well, Senator Lucero, I'm certain that you're ready. Come on. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I could, and if we could, I would rename the Minnesota Senate to the Omnibus Committee on Creating Homelessness. Democrats are passing policies, passing mandates that are directly responsible for the increase in property taxes that have been inflicted across the state. And those property taxes are causing people to be unable to afford their homes. They're causing homelessness. When this reality is brought to light of the Democrats, what do? Turn a blind eye. People on fixed incomes cannot afford their house because of Democrat property tax increases. People that want to buy their first house are unable to because Democrat mandates have made home ownership too expensive. People that are in apartments or other rental units themselves are finding it unaffordable. So, Mr. President, members, what we should be talking about are methods to actually make housing less expensive, to actually solve homelessness rather than redistribute wealth and create higher property taxes. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else before I go to the author and then we will vote? Seeing none, Senator Port, you will have the last word before we vote on final passage of House File 3425.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I appreciate our conversation on this important topic. I would like to flag that we could not have done this work without members of the supportive housing community, especially Allison Nessie, the hardworking people at MHFA, Senate staff, Jack Dudley, CJ Larson, Will Freeman, Laura Painter, and Eric Olafson, and everyone in both bodies and on both sides of the aisle who helped to advance this central piece of legislation in a bipartisan fashion. This bill provides badly needed funding to help seniors, individuals with disabilities, and other vulnerable Minnesotans to stay in their homes. It passed on strong bipartisan vote in the House, and we can act today to get this money out to communities across Minnesota and prevent disastrous consequences of homelessness. I wish that this was the long-term solution, Mr. President. That's what the $10 million was originally for, and that's why only a fraction of it has been spent, because this was creating the baseline to create a long-term solution for stably funding our supportive housing community. Unfortunately, Mr. President, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge how we got here. Last fall, the Trump administration threatened to fully double chronic homelessness across Minnesota in a senseless attack on stable housing. Trump's proposed cuts threatened to take housing away from thousands of seniors, survivors of domestic violence, and other Minnesotans who are most at risk of homelessness through defunding of the Continuum of Care program. These cuts targeted LGBTQ Minnesotans, vulnerable communities, and attempted to hold funding hostage to force compliance with ICE. They would have especially hurt Minnesotans in rural areas. 92% of permanent housing, supportive housing funding in St. Louis County comes from the federal Continuum of Care program. This program that we are opening up to process some funding through. 87% and 81% across southeast Minnesota. And without this program, vulnerable seniors and other individuals in greater Minnesota who are facing homelessness would simply have nowhere to go. Minnesota will care for our neighbors. With this bill, we can act right now and ensure that those Minnesotans that are facing disaster have a safe and stable place to call home. Please vote yes.
The Secretary will take the roll on final passage of House File 3425. Members, please vote. Senator Jasinski, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Liskey votes no.
Senator Liskey votes no. Senator Umu Verbatim, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Hochschild votes aye.
Senator Hochschild votes aye.
And Senator Latz votes aye.
And Senator Latz votes aye. All senators having voted who desires to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 39 ayes and 28 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Members, we are now moving on to the 13th order of business, which is announcements of Senate interests. Any announcements of Senate interests? Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would Senator Wickland yield for a question?
I'm sorry, who did you ask for?
Senator Wickland.
Senator Wickland, will you yield for questions? She will yield for questions. Senator Lucero.
Mr. President, Minnesotans are very angry at the levels of fraud in this state. Some cases have it more than $9 billion, but let's just take $9 billion. If we were to take $9 billion and lay them end to end around the equator, it would circle the Earth 35 times. If we take $9 billion, it would go laid end to end to the moon and back about 4 times. The magnitude of fraud in this state is outrageous. Mr. President, Senator Wickland, what have you done to prioritize the confirmation hearing of the nominee Gandhi over DHS for Minnesotans?
Members, give me one moment. Senator Wickland, to the question.
Mr. President, Senator Lucero, I'm not sure how this is an announcement of Senate interest, but I have prioritized it by speaking with the department and asking them to be working on preparations for a confirmation hearing, which would have been difficult to fit in before deadlines because we do have a large number of bills in the HHS committee to hear regarding program integrity, preventing fraud, addressing items that are very important to you and other members of the body. And so it's a priority, but before deadline, it is a higher priority was to make sure that we have many program integrity and anti-fraud bills heard, and so we can keep considering them after deadline.
And members, just to be clear, the reason why I did pause for a second to get some clarification, I want you to know that this is really not the place for the announcements of Senate interest, especially if you get into any policy, because this is reserved for announcements as opposed to anything else. Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would Senator Wickland yield for another question?
Senator Wickland, will you yield? She will not yield. Senator Lucero.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. That's unfortunate. The reason this would be of Senate interest is because it's of interest to Minnesotans to have a confirmation hearing on DHS due to the levels of fraud. The question I would have asked, if she were to yield, but she doesn't want to, would be, are we anticipating confirmation hearings when we come back from the legislative recess? We're about to go into legislative recess for a week. No business will be conducted, yet dollars of fraud are going to be lost. And so it should be an interest to Democrats in the Senate because it's an interest to Minnesotans. When we come back, Republicans will continue to push for confirmation hearings to have transparency and accountability, and we look forward to that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any announcements of Senate interest? Any announcements of Senate interest? Senator Kunesh.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, I just want to let you know that I dropped a resolution to highlight the ties between Quebec and Minnesota, particularly our shared connection of the Great Lakes and our strong commercial exchanges. While geographically distant, Quebec and Minnesota are connected by long-standing economic ties. In fact, my ancestors came from Quebec. And between 1840 and 1930, Francophones from Quebec migrated to the United States, including Minnesota. This has created a lasting communities and forming enduring ties that remain visible today. Think about the city of Little Canada and some of these other things. Quebec is eager to continue to strengthen its relationship with Minnesota through upcoming engagements and extended cooperation. The presentation of this resolution carries strong symbolic value for Quebec and reflects the importance it places in its relationships with Minnesota. I want to especially thank Senator Duckworth, Senator Ress, Senator Housley, Senator Hauschild for signing on to this resolution.
Senator Ress.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight is the opener for the Minnesota Twins. The home opener on April 3rd occurs while we are in recess. So the celebration of baseball that has been hosted by the president and more recently including myself is going to take place on Wednesday, April 8th in the MSB on the first floor. Senators and staff are welcome to attend, and it will be between the hours of 11:30 a.m. and 1 p.m. There is going to be the hot dogs team versus the peanuts and popcorn team at that event. You're all invited. We'll make the announcement again when we return from the break. Thank you, Mr. President.
And just to reiterate, it is going to be a great event. We're going to have some great food, and you all are invited. Senator Klein.
Mr. President, Senate Commerce Committee will meet as soon as feasible after this adjournment. I know some people have to grab lunch. Please get the lunch and get as fast as you can to G15 for Commerce.
Any other announcements of Senate interest? Seeing none, Senator Murphy for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate do now adjourn until Tuesday, April 7th at 11 a.m.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Senate is now adjourned until April 7th.
Sorry, didn't jump too soon. Sorry.
Woo!
I didn't realize that was awesome. Sorry.
That's okay. Take your time.
If I knew, because I know it was like 15 minutes left, now would be spring.
I've learned my lesson. Make sure people have
So
time.
I'll do the Ricavina thing while we're waiting.
Okay.
He used to say we're going to legalize gambling and they're going to do casinos and they're going to put them up on the range and they're going to call them casinos. That was
For making a little time here on Thursday as we get ready to head into a break. You will see our members now working today and tomorrow. I think the Judiciary Committee has another very full hearing tomorrow as they try to get all of the work done that they need to get done in the committee before the first committee deadline. And I want to say I'm very proud of the Senate and of my colleagues in our caucus for bringing the work that we need to do and their work ethic to the session that I have found to be fast-paced, intense, and challenging. We have a number of issues that we are moving on. You've heard me talk about these issues before. We are determined to get an independent inspector general proposal onto the governor's desk, and we're really grateful that the House, Democrats and Republicans, are now finally moving that proposal to get us into a position to pass it. There are other proposals related to fraud, whether it is the transparency, accountability, and making sure that people who have defrauded the government pay the price. You'll see more of that come through this session. And want to flag the work of Senator Kupek in addition to Senator Gustafson on this issue. They're both taking, I think, important steps in leading on those issues. Family budgets are an issue, and we're continuing to hear about that. The latest, of course, is the exceedingly quick rise in fuel prices. We've already had issues with heating in our homes and cooling in our homes as it relates to the federal government, but the war in the Middle East has spiked fuel prices for Minnesotans, and they're feeling that. We're all feeling that, and it draws our attention to the need to take the steps necessary to do what we can to ease the cost pain for people in their family budgets. And you'll see more of our work on that, whether it is housing support, the work that Senator Bolden is doing on manufactured homes and protecting people's home ownership from private equity, the work that we're seeing on surveillance pricing that we talked about yesterday with UFCW, but more importantly, influx of funding for rental assistance. You'll see heating assistance, energy assistance. We hope to do work for small businesses, more work in healthcare, more work in food support. We know that people are experiencing significant increases in their family budgets, much of it coming from Washington, D.C., and this president who really doesn't give a rip about people. But we do, and we're going to do what we can to make life more affordable for them. We have put together now packages on gun violence prevention and in response to Metro Surge. The Metro Surge package we'll take up when we come back after the break. There are, I think, 11 bills packaged together, many that were heard in multiple committees. Masks and the prohibition on masks, essential spaces, making sure we're rendering aid federal agents be responsible for rendering aid if they have shot somebody. The right of action, the Bivens work, and making sure that the BCA is able to participate fully in investigations that come as a result of Metro Surge. That will come to the floor, I think, early when we get back. Gun violence is a proposal that was also put together now that includes school safety, mental health, a ban on assault weapons, a ban on high-capacity magazines. That awaits action in the Finance Committee. We should soon take that up when we return as well. So we have done a lot of work to get us into position to move an agenda that we committed to for the people of Minnesota. And it is important that we keep our word, and we are working very hard to get that done for the people of Minnesota. And we're glad for a break, glad to spend a little time with our families. I will say I will spend time in Rochester and Duluth. We're going to do town hall in the district I represent, and many of our members will do town halls, roundtable discussions, etc. I think in this moment in America, in this moment in Minnesota, it is very important to stay in touch with the people of Minnesota. They are responding, and I think profoundly, to what we've experienced together. They're very invested in what we're accomplishing or what we're trying to accomplish, and we should do our work with them in partnership. So you'll see lots of us with the people of Minnesota over the break. I look forward to that as well before I get to go see my family and Bruce Springsteen.
What are your must-pass bills when you guys get back from break? What are the ones that you, as a leader, feel need to get done before you guys are comfortable adjourning signing day?
You know, there are a suite of things that I think from a supplemental budget perspective that I think are must do. We do have to pay for the security that we have put in place for this building and for the Senate building. And most of those costs are in personnel costs, as we've had many more people and many working overtime. So we need to make sure that we are accounting for that in this budget and into the future. I do think it is important that we take action on HCMC, on the hospital. But from my perspective, what we're seeing at HCMC is a bit of a canary in the coal mine. And I think we have to take a short-term step with HCMC and make sure that they are able to withstand the financial pressure that they're experiencing. It is a statewide asset, and it is a critical asset when we think about the suite of hospitals across the state of Minnesota. But many of our hospitals are going to experience a lot of difficulties as a result of HR1, and I think we have to think about HCMC in relationship to those other hospitals. So I do think that we need to take a short-term step on financing, but a longer-term approach in making sure our hospital and healthcare delivery system is stable. I hope and believe we need to take action on gun violence prevention. I made a commitment to the families when I met with them after the shooting at Annunciation. That's critically important to me, and we should do a bonding bill this session. We should absolutely get that done.
On guns and ICE, we know that those measures are likely to get tied up in the House. Do you expect just those kind of to come through end of session and maybe some compromises, or how do you expect those priorities, DFL priorities, to shake out?
I think the House is a bit of a question mark for us this year. And I will say we had dinner last night together, the 4 leaders, which was a chance for us to start talking a little bit about the work going forward. But they are moving at a different pace. And as we are putting policy bills together, they might not have a corresponding partner, but they may have pieces of those bills. So we've got an uneven path in terms of just how are we matching things up. I do think that we will find, in some cases, some common ground on some of the issues related to gun violence and related to ICE, though I don't expect to receive Republican votes on the assault ban or on high-capacity magazines. But it's important for Minnesotans to know that we're willing to take that action, and I think we should take that vote.
That dinner you had last night, anything all the leaders agreed about, anything that you think there is consensus on?
I think the one thing that I felt good about leaving that dinner was that we're all committed to getting some work done for the people of Minnesota. But we did not go into specific issues. It's the first time we've been together, really, I think, since the end of last session, the 4 of us.
But when you talk about pieces of bills coming through the House, I mean, just hearing you say that compared to what you're talking about wanting to pass in the Senate, That sounds like a train wreck.
Well, when you look back at what happened when we were in a tied legislature decades ago, the second year of the biennium was a bit of a train wreck. And I think Leader Stevenson and Speaker Demuth are not interested in that. So we have our members working with their members, tracking their bills. And hopefully, as we come through our process, we're able to discern and put together the necessary pieces to move an agenda for the people of Minnesota. I wish I could have control over the House. I don't. So I'm going to focus here in the Minnesota Senate and do our very best and continue an open line of communication with individual members and with the leadership over there.
Do you feel like having 1 week away from each other will help cool things down here?
I do. And I really appreciated a couple of weeks ago when you asked me the question, does it feel like everybody's angry? It has felt like this has been a more angry period of time for us, and I can understand why, because people have been through a lot. And I think we've experienced a lot of loss and grief and trauma together, but we don't talk about that very much. We talk about bills and legislation. So yeah, I hope time away with a little more time to sleep, and people that we consider our family, people we love in our communities will help us come back and focus.
Can you see what's going on with the Senate Jobs Committee? Kind of ended on a rough note the other day.
Yeah, I think Senator Champion is contemplating what he does next. It did end in a rough way, and I think there's some conversation that needs to happen between the chair and Senator Mohammed.
Similarly, Senator Mohammed and 2 other of your members voted to send Ellison's anti-fraud bill at a more roundabout committee path that was not the path that you had chosen initially. So what are the prospects for that at this point?
I think that we are going to come back. There are a number of pieces of legislation that we're contemplating regarding fraud. And this piece has had detractors in our caucus, and the Attorney General has been working to earn their support. And I think he's made a lot of headway there. So I've let him know that piece of legislation, if necessary, can get a late hearing and rules and keep on its way, especially because the U.S. Attorney has lost so many of their prosecutors. I think it's going to be important for us to invest in the Attorney General's office to make sure that as people are committing fraud or other crimes, there are adequate prosecutors in place to deal with that.
What have they expressed to you as, you said, detractors in the caucus? What have they said their issues are with that bill?
I think there are people who want to focus on prevention when it comes to fraud, and people who want to focus on program integrity when it comes to fraud, and people who want to focus on prosecution when it comes to fraud. All of those things are necessary for us to solve the problem in front of us. And I think we just have to be straightforward with Minnesotans that we've had a real problem, and it is wrong that people would break into government programs and steal. It separates us from the people and their faith in what we accomplish together. It separates people from services that we intend for them to get. It is a complex problem, and if you think about the report that we got from the administration, his report goes all the way back to 1977. So it is, I think, wrong to think that we're going to solve the entire problem in one session, and it's going to take multiple efforts and a lot of vigilance on our part going forward in our role in oversight, and it's going to take a lot of vigilance on the part of whoever becomes the next governor to make sure the administration and the agencies are doing their job.
On the note of fraud, since OIG is moving through the House committees now, how do you feel, members of your caucus, what's the vibe you're getting on the changes that are being made in that committee about to sit there?
So I'm glad to see they're making moves, and I'm glad to see that they are showing what their concerns are or what their interests are. You have to put your cards on a table in order to be able to find a conclusion in a negotiation. And that's what they're doing. I think what they're expressing, no surprise over there. And we will come to a conference committee, I hope, and negotiate those things out and get a bill to the governor's desk.
When that does get to the conference committee, do you think that'll be a slow process? Do you think it's going to take a long time? I mean, this has been, you guys passed this last year.
Yep.
You've been waiting in the House for a while here.
So the good news about the way that Senator Gustafson moved that bill was that she was very methodical, and she's done a lot of work in the Senate, both sides of the aisle. That's why we got that strong vote. But she's done as much work in the House with members, both sides of the aisle there as well. There are differences. We can figure that out. But people should be well versed in the proposal and the ideas. So hopefully when we get to a conference committee, it is a committee that comes together and can resolve those differences and get something to the governor's desk.
What do you think about overall productivity, not in the Senate, but in the legislature as a whole, compared to other sessions? Do you think it's pretty normal? Does this session feel a little slower paced? You said fast paced earlier, but I don't know if you were referencing just the Senate.
I can only speak for us. We've moved a lot of policy through committees. I think there are 27 bills that are going to be heard this afternoon in the various committees that are meeting today. We are moving a lot of policy, and we will continue on pace when we come back. I think that's what Minnesotans expect us to do. They want us to come here and do the work of the people and not just sit on our butts, and we're not gonna do that here in the Minnesota Senate.
How high a priority is bonding this year, especially given that you guys were able to get one done last year? Is it still like we really need to get this done, or is there kind of like we can let this slide if we need to?
Oh, I think it's a high priority it's certainly a high priority for our caucus, but I think it's a priority for all 4 caucuses. That's what I've heard over and over again. And if you listen to Minnesotans and to people who represent different communities, they are in need. So I don't think it is a political question. I think it is a question of can we meet the needs of the people of Minnesota, and we should.
Can you tell us what's going on with we still hear about the sports gambling thing. There was a hearing, I think, a couple weeks ago. Is that pretty much on the back burner, something you have to revisit next year?
It is a really good question for Senator Frentz. And I think that, we heard it. We had a procedural hearing, actually, in rules. We haven't actually heard the bill this session, but there are 2 other bills related to gambling. Senator Rasmussen's carrying a bill dealing with sweepstakes. Senator Marty is carrying a bill dealing with prediction markets, and I think we'll see action on those as well.
You had a conversation this morning about legislator safety and threats coming to all of you. You had a comment about threats coming in from a new member every week. I wonder if you can just speak to how prevalent and serious an issue this is, and whether there's a pathway and an interest to do something different this year.
I think that in a way that I have not experienced before, and really every week, there's a member either side of the aisle that is sharing that they've received some sort of threat. Much of it coming through social media, but phone calls or threats at people's homes. And I take it very seriously. It is an obligation that I believe is one for all of us, but I feel a special responsibility there for the safety of our members. I am working with council on the question of the intersection between our First Amendment rights and the threats that emanate from social media that seem to put people in precarious positions, and what we could use as a remedy here or a way to resolve or explore those differences, because the handshake agreement that we had after June 14th, which is let's all rein it in, isn't solving that problem. And I don't think we fully understand or appreciate the problem and the risk in order to be able to bring it into focus and do something about it, but I am really committed to that as well.
In Judiciary a couple of weeks ago, the bill that would have banned guns at the Capitol failed. What do you make of that issue, and also what do you make of legislators openly carrying? I've heard a couple different feelings and thoughts from legislators there, feeling uncomfortable, but also people wanting to protect themselves.
I think that conversation about people carrying in the Capitol and people carrying in the chamber is emblematic of the division that people feel about guns. Some people feel like they need them to protect themselves. Other people feel threatened by their presence. I'm a little frustrated by some who I think are using it as a tool to perhaps trigger emotion. And I think it is an issue that we're going to deal with if we have majority power again. But for now, the safety inside this Capitol reflects the laws that we've put in place, and if someone has a permit to carry, they can bring it in. They can bring their weapon in with them. But they have to go through screening.
Time for one more. Governor Walz had a supplemental budget presentation recently where he talked about expanding the child tax credit, a bunch of other provisions. Mm-hmm. I noticed you didn't mention the child tax credit. Is that something that you think the Senate will take up when you come back? And more generally, how closely or not closely are you kind of working with the governor this legislative session?
I think members, have seen the governor's budget proposal. We don't have language yet. There are provisions that some members really like and others that I think will be left behind in part because we can't afford them. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in the tax committee.
Really quickly, what if you had to describe the session in a word? Would you go with the angry answer?
I think I would. There's a pretty good dose of anger, and I think, how do you describe it? Traumatized, perhaps, but determined. Right behind that set of emotions that come from, the combination of political assassination, children being killed in a church, Minnesotans being killed on the street, civil rights, human rights being taken away, watching neighbors being torn apart, matched with the response of Minnesotans to a shooting in a school, an assassination of our colleagues, and Metro Surge. The response to all of those things have been profound. And America has noticed, and the world has really noticed and taken heed of what we stand for here. And I hope that we lean more into this is who we are as Minnesotans, and pick that up from the people of Minnesota and bring that here into our work and back to the people of Minnesota. They deserve that.
We'll have to leave it there, folks. Thank you. Thanks.
Happy Spinach Day.
Is that really? It really is. Wow.